Hi everyone, this is Laura from Deliberate Travel Kids. It's Map Week here at DTK, so I'm going to take this opportunity in the video to talk about 5 of my favourite maps to look at with kids, or books of maps, that I really recommend to explore with kids, different ways of looking at the world, including some looking at maps and geography and cartography from a slightly different angle. So here we go. So let's start with this one. This is one of my favourite map books of all times. It's called Maps by Aleksandra and Danielle, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Mizielinska and Mizielinski. It's a series of illustrated maps for countries around the world designed for children. So I can literally turn to any page and every single map is absolutely stunning. So this is a map of Greece. And it's got all sorts of illustrations for things that represent Greece or are important to Greek people. So, for example, you've got famous stuff like the Parthenon, Mount Olympus, the White Tower in Thessaloniki, but you've also got a whole series of less tangible things like ancient Greek gods, the sirens, actually they're not gods, they're just ancient Greeks, a boy playing an aulos, pottery, Pythagoras' theorems, all sorts of things that are linked to Greece. And when we're making workbooks, we actually use this book a huge amount. So every time we pick a new country, let's say Egypt, we have a workbook on Egypt, we will immediately go to the page of that country in this book and start brainstorming based on what's in the book. So we tend to use this as a jumping off point. And it covers lots of countries in the world, not all of them, but a lot. So if I was going to recommend one book to look at with kids, to get for kids, it would be this one, definitely. So the second book I recommend is this one. It's called A Map of the World According to Illustrators and Storytellers, and it's published by Gestalten. So it's not specifically designed for children, but it's so colourful and approaches maps in such a fun, different way. It's great for them to look through, even if they don't necessarily read it from cover to cover. So for example, here is a really colourful map of Europe, just a way of thinking about maps in a slightly different way, as is this one. This one represents a whole series of kind of symbols of France, like a yellow jersey, cheese, not sure what that is, looks like a buffalo. So it's a real expression of how you can think about maps differently than just the topographical presentation of a country. So I've highlighted a couple of my favourite ones for you to get an idea, bookmarked with these rather charming deliberate travel bookmarks. So this one is, they call it arterial Brooklyn. So it's all the roads and streets all across Brooklyn, and it's a really interesting way for kids to think about what maps are designed to show. What is the purpose of them? Then another one is going to be much more familiar for kids, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's basically a hand-drawn map of a neighbourhood, and it's got a whole series of labels and illustrations like James used to live here, falafel nights. This is the sort of thing that can really inspire kids to make their own maps of the neighbourhoods that they live in as well. And the final one is, I just love this one because it's really colourful. It's a map of Europe with a whole series of famous buildings and lots of beautiful different colours. So this is another great one to look at with kids. This is a really fantastic book of maps for kids who are into stories, storytelling or reading. It's called The Writer's Map, an Atlas of Imaginary Lands, and it's edited by Hugh Lewis-Jones. And it's a series of essays, which are probably a bit sophisticated for kids, but the illustrations are stunning, of fictional maps that are famous in literature. So for example, it starts off, this is a visualization of the story of Moby Dick and the journey that they go on following the white whale. And then here are some other ones. This one's of, if you ever read Swallows and Amazons as a child, this is one of the supposedly hand-drawn maps by the children charting where they stay in their summer away from their parents. There's another one here, most people should recognize this one, it's Winnie the Pooh, the map of the neighborhood. This is another one of Narnia, and then here we have one from The Hobbit. going through the Misty Mountains to where Smaug lives. And there's one of Treasure Island here, which is really colourful, sort of things that kids can really recreate themselves. And there's just a whole load of different ones. The thing that I really enjoy about this is not only are they colourful, all sorts of different kinds of maps representing imaginary places, real places, all that kind of thing. It's also a great way to inspire kids to read a little bit. They may see some of the maps in here and say, I want to read that book, and end up really expanding their literary horizons. So I would really recommend this, particularly for slightly older kids and the ones who really love reading. This one's called Brilliant Maps, an atlas for curious minds, and it's a series of infographics using maps. So it's more about the information that can be communicated through a map rather than, again, focusing on geography or topography. So there's a whole bunch of really amazing ones. There's not too much writing in this, so it's really great for kids to be able to look at lots of the different colourful maps, but also work out how to make sense of the information themselves without necessarily having to be told. So there's some really fun ones for kids. This first one is countries that have a McDonald's and countries that don't have a McDonald's. Unsurprisingly, the yellow countries, most of the world, do have a McDonald's, but there's quite a few that don't, including Iceland, which I didn't know. Then there's also, this is a really interesting one. This circle here, more people live inside the circle than outside of the circle. It just really gives kids a bit of perspective on the entire world and the people that live in it rather than just their small area of it. And this one for kids who've done our Italy workbook, it's if the Roman Empire reunited, what would it look like? And it would cover, as you can see, most of Europe, some of North Africa, and the Middle East as well. It's pretty impressive to think that all of that emerged from one tiny city just somewhere around here. So yeah, this one's really great just for adults and kids to have around the house, for everybody to get out and have a look at whenever you're in the mood for a little bit of interesting information. Finally, I had to finish with the Deliberate Travel Kids map. So this is a map that we designed ourselves, covering most of the countries in the world. We couldn't fit all of them onto a map because it's tougher than it looks. So it's bright and colourful, but the most important part is that every country has a little white checkbox next to it. So it's designed for kids to write on, scribble over. And the way we hope that kids will use it is that every time they complete a workbook from Deliberate Travel, they'll be able to tick it off. So we've got, for example, Iceland, Scotland, Ireland, Wales should be ticked off, Mexico, Brazil. Or kids can also use it to tick off countries they've been to, countries they want to go to, however they really want to use it. So those are our recommendations for maps and books of maps to look at with kids. All of them should be available from most bookstores, and I'm going to put a list with correct spellings in the notes at the bottom. If you want to get hold of a Deliberate Travel Kids map, we are actually running a deal this week. When you buy a annual subscription to Deliberate Travel Kids workbooks, then you also get a free map with it. So if you want to learn more about what we do, how we do it, and whether you'd be interested in buying a subscription, you can check us out at www.deliberatetravel.com. Thanks very much. Bye.